The Jim and Terry Show, solo podcast until Jim joins me for breakfast and coffee and lunch tomorrow. Looking forward to that, my good friend. It's hard to talk to yourself. Maybe that's the future. We will be talking to ourselves. Maybe we will create our own AI self and put on our virtual reality glasses and talk to ourselves, have our own avatar, talk to ourselves, populate a whole virtual reality place where we are our own population. But until then, we have to get along with each other. We have to listen to each other. We have to converse, learn the art of conversation, the art of discourse, the art of you speak, I speak, we take turns, we share. That didn't happen so much at the Trump-Harris debate. Should I grace him with first position, Trump-Harris? No, let's put it in proper perspective. And I will let it go to this clip from MSNBC.
Michael Steele, you were quite animated when I saw you in the hallway earlier about that debate.
I'm
going to see what you're going to tell me. You think of the debate that you told me in the hallway. What was your take on the debate, Michael Steele? Go ahead. What was the key moment?
She spanked that ass. I'm sorry. That's what she did. She came.
All right. Well, there you go. That's a former Republican National Convention leader, the former head of the Republican Party, Michael Steele, came out with that opening line. She spanked his ask me no questions. And from there, the whole debate was analyzed with a panel of some of my favorite MSNBC, Molly Jong-Fast and Jen Psaki were there, as well as Ari Melber, for this little post-game analysis. But let me give you my take. And I think if you go on to social media, you'll find probably a fairly divided, partisan-based analysis. Some will say Trump did his greatest thing. He held his own, blah, blah, blah. And then the Democratic and those in the middle and leaning left will say that was the most amazing debate performance that they've seen in a presidential debate. Well, let's start off by saying it wasn't a debate. You cannot debate someone who lies incessantly. It's not possible. The best you could hope is that, number one, your moderators are in control of the clock and enforce it rigorously. But according to an analysis that I read this morning, Trump got at least 5 to 6 minutes of extra time. And in an hour and a half show with 2 commercial breaks, well, that might be enough to skew it in Trump's favor. So I didn't like that. And it was obvious. I didn't know the exact times, but how many times I raised my voice and yelled at the TV, cut his mic, stop him from talking, don't let him speak. Yeah, it wasn't fair and balanced the way I thought ABC, considering who their hosts were supposed to be, these top-notch, most widely viewed live stream news podcasts or news broadcasts from from ABC. So how did they hold up? I am not convinced that it was anything but the best they could do. Was it the best possible? No, it was the best they could do. Fact-checking Trump, yeah, a couple of times. Why only Trump? Because he's the only one lying at that point, and you can challenge the accuracy of data. You can challenge the accuracy of numbers. You can quote sources and compare sources and analyze reliable sources more or less. But facts remain stubborn things, and they do end up biting you, quite pronounced in that bite, in the posterior. Or as Michael Steele said, she spanked his woohoo. Yeah, she did. And there are lots of other things that we can point out. One would be the whole tone. Who was most presidential? The angry guy. We like to, Jim Simpson likes to do the angry Alex Jones voice. And generally speaking, that's the rage that you hear, and the tone and the words coming from the right. Angry, blaming, fear-mongering, name-calling, finger wagging, tongue wagging, dismissive, demeaning, condescending. I know more than anybody else. I'm the smartest guy in the room. I can do this. Only I can solve the problem. Well, it was the demagogue's playbook. It was the authoritarian playbook that Trump was using. And the key tell in all of that, when she started to talk about Trump being laughed at, that really got under his skin. I guess there were a couple of times when I felt that she scored a point that really got him. You could tell by his facial expressions that he didn't like that. He was being picked on, and he's not used to being picked on. He's used to doing the picking on. Used to be the one condescending, bossing everybody else around. You're fired. Well, she did say you were fired by 81 million Americans. There you go. Truth hurts when it cuts to the chase of your own delusions. Yeah, you might have had the most votes of any presidential candidate from the Republican Party, but you did not get enough to win the 2020 election. 81 to 75 was the final score in favor of Democrats, and 65 court cases later, you're still a loser, former guy. And that was just one of the points, one of the many scored. Appealing to authority. Character witnesses. He was not asked this, he brought it up himself. His own character witness. Who did he refer to? Who did he call to the stand to defend him when Kamala Harris started to impugn his character? Viktor Orban. What? You gotta be out of your mind. Yes. You're out of your mind, and that was more evidence. To use Viktor Orban as your character reference is like using Kim Jong-un, Xi Jinping, Vladimir Putin. In fact, I think at one point he did go through that whole list. Yeah, those are your character references? The dictators and scourge of the civilized world? Really? And that says something about your worldview and your idea of self when autocrats, demagogues, and ne'er-do-wells, assassins, murderers, dictators are your character reference. You have a problem. And so that was just typical of Trump's playbook. And he dug himself into the pit, threw in the shovel, and started to bury himself with his own words, which is what dictators do. Be sure your sins will find you out. In this day and age of social media, in this day and age of videotaping everything, in this day and age of public record being, rife with examples of people putting their foot, both of them, inside their mouths and talking out of both sides at the same time while being occupied by your left and right foot, yeah, it's public record. Be sure that what you say can and will be held against you in a presidential debate, for instance. So to read back some of the things that Trump believes to be true and denying that he said them or that he believed that or he thought that or he said that is just plain ridiculous. Or to use a word that I think describes a plant. I just looked it up because my wife brought in this leaf and asked me to identify it with an app on my phone, which I happen to have. And the plant name, I think, is almost a parody of this term that was made famous in some kind of movie. Don't quote me on it, but if you know it, you can write it into the comment section. Redonkulous. There is a plant, I think it's a wild buttercup or something like that. Anyway, check it out. In the realm of public speech, redonkulous is the word of the day. Trump was redonkulous. And that just goes to show you the extreme of his lack of preparedness. Well, no, I will have to acquiesce. I will have to say Trump seemed to be prepared in what he thinks preparation is for a debate. He had his talking points, and he just cycled through them all the time. He would introduce his talking points because these are the things he wanted to talk about, whether the host, the anchors, wanted to have those topics covered or not. So, yeah, all in all, Trump did something, but it was more like both feet in your own mouth while you're talking. Kamala Harris, seasoned prosecutor, was on the prowl right from the get-go. Right from the get-go, she owned that platform. She came out and shook his hand. She crossed the stage. He was not going to. He was going to hide behind the podium. Wasn't gonna invite a handshake with Kamala Harris. In fact, when she crossed and shook hands with him, she's introduced herself with her name the way it's supposed to be pronounced, not the way Trump always does. When he mocks people, he mocks their names, mispronounces their names, gives them pet names, and slanders them and picks on them and goes on and on and on, mocking them. She owned that platform from the moment she crossed the midpoint of the stage, right at the beginning, and shook his hand. He couldn't hide from her extended hand and said, Kamala Harris. There you go. She gave it to him. That's how you say my name, sir. And he never did refer to her by her name. Interesting stuff. Power politics. Isn't that a CBC show, Power and Politics? Yeah, it's all about power and how you use the space, how you use your words. Trump never once, at least not in my opinion, looked at Kamala Harris. She stared him down. When she was speaking about him and to him, she turned and looked. He was interested in one person, not the female anchor, the male. He was white. He was white. There's something about it that Trump relates to, a white guy club. Yeah, well, there's more, so much more to say about this, but that's my take. Undoubtedly, when Jim gets in the hot seat, I think it's tomorrow, we'll talk about all things SpaceX, all things political, social, cultural, and who knows what. Tomorrow on The Jim and Tara Show. Bye-bye for now.